Know your place, you nobody, Victoria Langley hissed, her hand striking Amina Carter's face in the shimmering obsidian casino. The slap echoed, halting the clatter of poker chips and stifling gilded laughter. Every gaze fixed on Amina, but she didn't waver. Her dark eyes burned with a secret too dangerous to name. What came next wasn't just drama. It was a storm of betrayal and hidden truths that left the elite stunned. Beneath her bartender's apron, Amina carried a past that could topple empires, a shadow poised to strike. This tale of revenge and deception will hook you from the first blow. What mystery could freeze a casino in its tracks? Share your predictions below, give us a like, and hit subscribe to never miss a twist. Where are you watching this epic unfold? Tell us in the comments and brace for more electrifying stories. Amina Carter's fingers danced over the cocktail shaker, ice clinking like chips on a poker table. The Obsidian's VIP lounge pulsed with low laughter and the sharp clatter of ivory chips. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms across black velvet walls, and the air was thick with perfume and ambition. Amina, her dark skin barely catching the light, moved like a shadow behind the bar, her eyes scanning the crowd. To them, she was just the help, nameless, invisible. At the high-stakes poker table, Ethan Caldwell sat, his angular face lit by the glow of his phone. His tailored suit hugged his lean frame, but his eyes, pale and restless, betrayed a man adrift. Across from him, Victoria Langley tossed her blonde hair, the diamond on her left hand flashing like a weapon. Her laughter sliced through the murmur, sharp and performative. "Darling, you're ignoring me again," she purred, leaning toward Ethan, her voice dripping with mock hurt. Ethan didn't look up. "Work doesn't pause, Victoria." She pouted, turning to Lisette Dubois, who lounged nearby, a cigarette dangling from her manicured fingers. Lisette, the lounge singer with a voice like smoke, smirked. "Men and their toys," she drawled, her green eyes glinting with malice. "You'd think $1 billion buys attention." Victoria's smile tightened. "Oh, Ethan's attentive when it matters. Like when he bought this." She waved her ringed hand, catching every eye at the table. The diamond was obscene, a cold star that screamed wealth. Amina, pouring bourbon for a gray-haired tycoon, caught the gesture. Her jaw tightened, but her face stayed blank, a mask honed over years. Claude Moreau, the casino manager, hovered at the edge of the scene, his thin frame rigid in a pristine suit. His pale hands twitched, eyes darting to ensure every detail was flawless. "Miss Carter," he hissed, gliding to the bar. "Faster with the drinks. Table 3's waiting." Amina nodded, her movements precise, but her mind was elsewhere. On the man at the poker table, on the woman beside him, on a plan 5 years in the making. She wasn't Amina Carter, not really. She was Zara King, the ghost who'd built Nexus, the AI that could predict societal collapse or economic booms. She'd vanished to protect her brother Idris, to hunt Roland Pierce, the man who'd buried a digital dagger in her life's work. The Obsidian was her hunting ground, chosen because Ethan and Victoria came here. Month after month, their guard down in this den of excess. Amina slid a martini to a guest, her eyes flicking to Victoria, who was now regaling the table with a story. "At the gala, she wore last season's couture. Can you imagine?" Victoria's hands flailed, her ring catching the light. Amina moved to their table, tray balanced, a cocktail shimmering amber in her hand. She leaned in, setting the glass before Victoria, when Victoria's arm swung wide, knocking Amina's wrist. A single drop of liquor leaped from the glass, a perfect amber bead, and landed on Victoria's silk dress. The room didn't stop, not yet. Victoria froze mid-sentence, her blue eyes narrowing to slits. "You clumsy idiot," she hissed, her voice low but venomous. Ethan glanced up, brow furrowing, but his phone still held his focus. "Miss Langley, I'm so sorry," Amina said, her tone smooth, practiced. She reached for a napkin, but Victoria slapped it away. "Don't touch me," Victoria snapped, standing so fast her chair scraped the marble floor. "Do you know what this dress costs? More than your pathetic life." Her voice rose, cracking the lounge's polished hush. Heads turned. Lisette's cigarette paused halfway to her lips. Claude's face went white, his hands clasping in panic. "Victoria, it's a dress," Ethan muttered, eyes still on his screen. "Sit down." Sit down. Victoria's laugh was shrill. This, this nobody ruined it. She pointed at Amina, her ring flashing like a blade. Amina stood still, tray in hand, her pulse steady. She'd faced worse than this. Threats, shadows, a live feed of Idris's face with a warning. Ghosts can't be missed, but brothers can. You're done, Victoria spat. Fired, get out. Claude rushed forward, sweat beading on his brow. Miss Langley, please. We'll handle this. Miss Carter, apologize. Now. Amina set the tray down, her movements deliberate. The room watched, waiting for her to crumble, to beg. Instead, she straightened, her dark eyes locking onto Victoria's. You shouldn't have done that, Miss Langley, she said, her voice clear, cutting through the silence like a knife. The words weren't loud, but they carried. A warning, a promise. Victoria scoffed, but a flicker of unease crossed her face. What did you say? I said, Amina repeated, stepping closer. You shouldn't have done that. Her gaze shifted to Ethan, who finally put his phone down. His eyes narrowed, searching her face, as if a memory stirred. A voice, a moment, a ghost. Get her out! Victoria shrieked, turning to Claude. Now! Claude grabbed Amina's arm. Miss Carter, you're done. Leave. Amina didn't move. She looked past Victoria, past Claude's trembling grip, and met Ethan's stare. His mouth opened, a single word escaping, barely a breath. Zara! The room tilted. Lisette's cigarette fell, scattering ash. Victoria's head whipped around. What did you say? You know this thing? Ethan's gaze didn't waver. Zara, he said again, louder, as if testing the name. Amina's lips curved, a bitter, fleeting smile. It's me, Ethan. The obsidian didn't just pause. It froze. Chips stopped clinking. Glasses sat untouched. Every eye, from tycoons to waiters, locked on the woman in the black uniform, the woman who just turned their world upside down. Victoria's face drained of color, her ringed hand trembling. Claude's grip on Amina's arm slackened, his mouth agape. Lisette leaned forward, her smirk gone, replaced by raw curiosity. Amina stood tall, the weight of 5 years pressing against her chest. She wasn't here for Victoria's tantrum or Claude's panic. She was here for Ethan, for Roland, for the truth buried in lines of code. The slap was nothing, a spark. What came next would burn the house down. Amina Carter stood firm, her dark eyes boring into Ethan Caldwell's. The Obsidian's VIP lounge held its breath, the air thick with the scent of spilled bourbon and stunned silence. Ethan's phone lay forgotten on the poker table, his pale face a map of shock and dawning recognition. Zara, he said again, voice hoarse as if pulling the name from a grave. Victoria Langley's manicured nails dug into her palms, her diamond ring glinting like a trapped star. You're insane, she spat, her voice trembling with rage and something new. Fear. She's a liar. Amina didn't flinch. Call me what you want, Miss Langley. It doesn't change the truth. Her words were steady, each one a chip tossed onto the table, raising the stakes. The crowd leaned in, tycoons and socialites clutching their drinks, sensing a scandal worth millions. Claude Moreau, the casino manager, hovered like a nervous ghost, his pale hands wringing. Miss Carter, enough, he hissed, voice cracking. You're making a scene. Apologize, or you're out. His eyes darted to Victoria, then Ethan, desperate to salvage the night. Amina ignored him. She stepped closer to the poker table, her black uniform stark against the room's opulence. I'm not here to apologize, Claude. I'm here to finish what I started. Her gaze locked on Ethan, who rose slowly, his tall frame casting a shadow over the green felt. 5 years, Ethan. 5 years I've been gone. You want to know why? Ethan's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching. I looked for you, he said, low and raw. I spent millions. Zurich, Shanghai, Buenos Aires. I thought you were dead. His voice broke on the last word, and for a moment, the billionaire was just a man, stripped bare. Victoria laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. This is pathetic. She's playing you, Ethan. She's nobody, a bartender. But her eyes betrayed her, flicking to Amina with a wariness she couldn't hide. Lisette Dubois, lounging against a velvet pillar, stubbed out her cigarette, her red lips curving into a half-smile. Let her talk, Vicky, she drawled. This is better than my set list. Amina's mind flashed back, unbidden, to a night 5 years ago. She sat in a dimly lit Caltech lab, her fingers flying over a keyboard, coding Nexus, the AI that could map human behavior, predict crises, reshape economies. Beside her was Ethan, his eyes alight with ambition, their coffee cups piling up. They'd been partners, equals, until Roland Pierce, their first investor, buried a digital trap in the code. She'd found it, a parasitic program siphoning data, feeding it to an unseen enemy. When she confronted the ghost of Roland's system, a camera flickered on her laptop, showing Idris, her brother, studying in his dorm. A message blinked. Ghosts can't be missed, but brothers can. She'd run, erased herself, become Amina Carter to keep Idris safe. Now, standing in the obsidian, she felt the weight of that choice. I didn't leave because I wanted to, Ethan, she said, her voice low but clear. I left because I had to. Roland Pierce was in our system, stealing everything. Our projections, our research, our future. He threatened my brother. I became a ghost to hunt him. Ethan's eyes widened, a storm of questions brewing. Roland, we cut him out 7 years ago. He's gone. He's not gone, Amina said, her tone sharp. He's been playing a long game, Ethan. And you... She turned to Victoria, who froze. You're his ace in the hole. Victoria's face went ashen, her lips parting in a silent gasp. What are you talking about? She demanded, but her voice wavered, betraying her. The crowd murmured, sensing blood in the water. Lisette's smile widened, her eyes glinting with delight at the unfolding drama. Don't play innocent, Amina said, stepping closer, her presence commanding the room. I've been here 6 months watching. You and your father, Aldrich Langley, have been bleeding money. Your family's empire is crumbling, and Roland offered a lifeline. All you had to do was get close to Ethan, get his trust, get his codes. Lies, Victoria shrieked, her hands shaking. You're delusional. Claude, get her out. But Claude stood frozen, his authority crumbling under Amina's stare. Ethan turned to Victoria, his expression hardening. Is it true? He asked, his voice ablade. Tell me she's wrong. Victoria's eyes darted, searching for an escape. Ethan, darling, she's twisting things. My father, he's in business, yes, but I don't know any Roland. Her words tumbled out, too fast, too desperate. Lisette raised an eyebrow, leaning forward, her silence louder than any accusation. Amina pressed on, relentless. 3 weeks ago, at this very table, you took a call from Aldrich. You were upset, said the merger was the deal, that once you were married, you'd have Ethan's passcodes, his servers, everything. You told your father to tell Roland to be patient. Amina's voice was a hammer, each word striking true. Then you ordered a second martini and tipped me $5. The room erupted in whispers. A tycoon in a pinstripe suit pulled out his phone, typing furiously. Lisette let out a low whistle. Well, damn, she muttered, loud enough for the table to hear. Victoria's knees buckled, but she caught herself on the table, her ring clinking against the wood. You were spying on me? She stammered, her face a mask of panic. You're obsessed. No, Amina said, her voice cold as steel. I'm thorough. I had to be, to survive. She looked at Ethan, whose hands were clenched, knuckles white. Roland's been shorting your stock, feeding your rivals, planning a takeover. He's not just stealing, Ethan. He's waiting to buy Nexus for pennies when it crashes. Ethan's gaze shifted to Victoria, searching for a lie, a truth, anything. Victoria, he said, his voice dangerously low. Did you know? She shook her head, tears welling. Ethan, I swear, I didn't. My father, he's desperate, but I didn't know it was like this. Her voice cracked, but it wasn't enough. Ethan's eyes darkened. The man who'd built an empire now seeing betrayal in the woman he'd chosen. Claude finally found his voice. Miss Carter, you're fired, he said. But it was weak, a plea more than a command. Amina didn't look at him. She was done with masks, done with shadows. Ethan stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Zara, he said, softer now, almost a plea. Why didn't you come to me? Why this charade? Amina's eyes softened, just for a moment, the weight of 5 years flickering across her face. Because you wouldn't have believed me, Ethan. Not then. You were the king, untouchable. I had to wait until Roland showed his hand. She paused, her voice dropping. And he just did. The obsidian's light seemed to dim. the chandeliers casting long shadows. Victoria's sobs were the only sound, a pathetic counterpoint to the storm Amina had unleashed. The game had changed, and Amina was no longer a bystander. She was the dealer, and the next card was hers to play. Amina Carter stood at the center of the Obsidian's VIP lounge, her black uniform a stark contrast to the glittering crowd. Ethan Caldwell's eyes, wide with shock, bored into her, his question, "Why didn't you come to me?" still hanging in the air. Victoria Langley clutched the poker table, her tear-streaked face crumpling under the weight of Amina's accusations. The murmurs of tycoons and socialites buzzed like static, their phones already lighting up with the scandal. Lisette Dubois leaned against a pillar, her red lips parted in a mix of awe and amusement, while Claude Moreau, the manager, stood frozen, his authority shattered. "I'm Zara King," Amina said, her voice steady, cutting through the chaos. "And I'm not here to play games." She stepped forward, her gaze flicking from Ethan to Victoria, who flinched as if struck. "Roland Pierce didn't just betray you, Ethan. He's been gutting Nexus for years, and she—" Amina pointed at Victoria, her finger ablade. "Was his way in." Victoria's sob choked out, her diamond ring catching the chandelier's light. "You're lying," she cried, her voice shrill, but her eyes darted, betraying her. "Ethan, she's making this up. She's jealous, obsessed." Her hands flailed, knocking over a glass, the crash punctuating her panic. Ethan's face was stone, his tall frame rigid. "Stop," he said, his voice low. "Dangerous." He turned to Amina, searching her face. "Zara, you disappeared. 5 years. No note, no trace. I buried you in my head. Now you're here, saying Roland's alive and she's part of it? Prove it." Amina's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile. "You always needed proof, Ethan." She reached into her apron pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper. Worn, creased, but deliberate. "This is a transcript of a call Victoria made 3 weeks ago. Right here, table 7. I wrote it down, word for word." She unfolded it, her voice rising to carry over the crowd. "Father, tell Roland to be patient. I'll have Ethan's passcodes after the wedding. His servers, his trust, everything." The room gasped, a collective intake of breath. Lisette let out a low, "Well, hell," her cigarette forgotten. A tycoon in a velvet blazer typed furiously on his phone, likely shorting Langley stock already. Claude's hands trembled, his managerial instincts drowned by the unfolding drama. Victoria's face drained of color, her knees buckling. That's not true," she stammered, grabbing Ethan's arm. "She's forging it, Ethan. I'd never—" Ethan yanked his arm free, his eyes never leaving Amina. "Keep talking," he said, his voice a command. Amina held his gaze, unflinching. "I chose the Obsidian because you come here, Ethan. You and her. It's where she let her guard down, where I could listen. Roland's been using her to get to you, to Nexus. He's not just stealing data, he's planning to crash your empire and buy the ruins." Ethan's jaw clenched, a flicker of pain crossing his face. "Roland was gone. I made sure of it." "You made sure of nothing," Amina said, her tone sharp but not cruel. "You're a builder, Ethan, not a coder. You didn't see the back door he left in Nexus's foundation. I did. It's been siphoning your projections, your innovations, feeding them to your rivals. He's been shorting your stock, waiting for the perfect moment to strike." Lisette stepped forward, her heels clicking on the marble. "Hold on," she said, her voice smooth but pointed. "I heard her, Ethan. Not the call, but last month at the bar. Victoria was on her phone, whispering about some guy named Roland. Said he was handling things. I thought it was just her usual drama." She shrugged, her eyes glinting with mischief. "Guess not." Victoria's head snapped toward Lisette, betrayal flashing across her face. "You're lying too. You're all against me." Her voice broke, tears streaming, but the room's sympathy was long gone. Ethan turned to Victoria, his expression a mix of disgust and disbelief. "Is it true?" he asked, each word heavy. "Did you know Roland? Did you plan this?" Victoria's lips quivered, her hands twisting the hem of her ruined dress. "Ethan, my father, he's desperate. The family's broke, okay? He said Roland could help, but I didn't know what it meant. I just wanted to save us." Her confession spilled out, raw and frantic, sealing her fate. Ethan's shoulders sagged, the weight of betrayal hitting hard. He looked at Amina, his voice barely above a whisper. Why now, Zara? Why tonight? Amina's eyes softened, but her resolve didn't waver. Because tonight she slipped, she said, nodding at Victoria. She showed her hand, and I had to play mine. Roland's close, Ethan. Closer than you think. If we don't move now, Nexus is done. Claude finally spoke, his voice a squeak. Miss Carter, you're fired. This is chaos. But no one listened. The crowd was too busy whispering, their phones buzzing with the news. Ethan ignored Claude, stepping closer to Amina. What do you need? He asked, his voice firm, the CEO resurfacing. If Roland's out there, what's the play? Amina's gaze was steel. We go to Nexus, we lock him out, and we use her, she nodded at Victoria, who whimpered, to draw him in. Victoria's sobs grew louder, but Amina didn't look at her. The obsidian chandeliers cast long shadows, the poker table a silent witness to the game that had just begun. Amina had shown her card, and the stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. Victoria Langley's sobs echoed through the obsidian's VIP lounge, her silk dress clinging to her trembling frame. Amina Carter stood resolute, her dark eyes fixed on Ethan Caldwell, who towered over the poker table, his face a mask of cold fury. The crowd of tycoons and socialites leaned in, their whispers a low hum, phones discreetly capturing the unraveling drama. Lisette Dubois twirled a lock of auburn hair, her smirk barely concealed, while Claude Moreau wrung his hands, his managerial composure shattered. The air crackled with tension, the chandelier light fracturing across Victoria's diamond ring, a glittering lie. You used me, Ethan said, his voice low, each word a shard of ice. He stared at Victoria, who shrank under his gaze. You were going to hand Nexus to Roland. My life's work. Our work. His eyes flicked to Amina, a flash of guilt surfacing. Victoria's tears streamed, mascara streaking her pale cheeks. Ethan, please, she choked, reaching for his hand. I didn't know it was like that. Father said it was just business, a deal to save us. I love you. Her voice cracked, desperate, but the words rang hollow. Amina stepped forward, her black uniform stark against the room's opulence. Love, she said, her tone sharp, cutting through Victoria's plea. You sold him out for a lifeline from Roland Pierce. You knew exactly what you were doing. Her words were deliberate, each one landing like a blow. She turned to Ethan. She's not the victim here. She's the dealer. Ethan's jaw tightened, his hands clenching into fists. How deep does this go, Victoria? He demanded. What did you give him? My passcodes? My servers? His voice rose, the CEO's authority breaking through his shock. Victoria shook her head, her blonde hair falling loose. Nothing, I swear. I didn't give him anything yet. Father said, he said after the wedding we'd have access, that Roland would handle it. Her confession spilled, frantic, her eyes darting to the crowd as if seeking rescue. None came. Lisette let out a soft laugh, stepping closer, her heels clicking. Oh, Vicky, you're a terrible liar, she said, her voice dripping with mock pity. I heard you at the bar last month, bragging about sealing the deal with Ethan's trust. You sounded so proud. She tilted her head, her green eyes glinting. Guess Roland's not the only one playing you. Victoria's face crumpled, her hands covering her mouth. You traitor, she hissed at Lisette, but her voice lacked strength. The room's attention shifted to Amina, who stood like a pillar, unshaken. Ethan turned to Amina, his expression a mix of pain and resolve. Zara, he said, using her true name. What's Roland's endgame? If she's his way in, what's he after? Amina's gaze was steady, her mind racing through lines of code and years of vigilance. Control, she said. Nexus isn't just an AI, Ethan. It predicts the societal shifts, riots, market crashes, elections. Roland's been siphoning its data to manipulate markets, sell to rivals, even rogue states. But he wants more. He wants the core, the predictive models we locked away. With those, he could reshape the world or burn it down. Ethan's eyes widened, a flicker of horror crossing his face. The Pandora subsets, he whispered, naming the algorithms they had deemed too dangerous to deploy. He's after them? Amina nodded. He thought Victoria would get him the keys. Marriage, trust, Access? It was a long con, and she was the perfect pawn. She glanced at Victoria, who was now slumped against the table, her sobs quieter, but no less pitiful. Claude, regaining a shred of courage, stepped forward. "This is unacceptable," he stammered, his pale face flushed. "Miss Carter, you've disrupted everything. I'm calling security." But his threat was empty. The crowd ignored him, their eyes on Amina. Ethan raised a hand, silencing Claude. "No security," he said, his voice firm. "We're not done." He looked at Victoria, his expression unreadable. "You're going to tell me everything. Every call, every meeting, every promise Roland made." Victoria's head snapped up, her eyes wild. "I can't. He'll destroy us. Father said Roland has people everywhere. Hackers, enforcers." Her voice trembled, but Ethan didn't soften. "Then you should have thought of that before you betrayed me," he said, his tone final. He turned to Amina. "What's our move?" Amina's mind was already 3 steps ahead. "We go to Nexus now," she said. "We lock down the servers, trace Roland's back door. But we need her." She nodded at Victoria, who gasped. "She's our bait. Roland thinks she's still his inside player. We use that." Victoria's sobs stopped, replaced by raw panic. "No, you can't! He'll kill me!" She lunged toward Ethan, but he stepped back, leaving her grasping air. Lisette clapped slowly, her smile wicked. "Brilliant," she said, looking at Amina. "You're not just a bartender, are you? This is better than any game in this place." Amina ignored her, focusing on Ethan. "We have hours, maybe less. Roland's close to cracking the Pandora subsets. If he gets them, it's over." Ethan nodded, his resolve hardening. "Then we move. Now!" He pulled out his phone, barking orders to his security team. "Get the chopper to the roof. Nexus Tower, full lockdown. No one in or out." He looked at Victoria, his voice cold. "You're coming with us." Victoria's legs gave out, and she sank to the floor, her dress pooling around her. The obsidian chandeliers cast jagged shadows, the poker table a silent judge. Amina felt no pity. Victoria had played her hand and lost. The real game was just beginning, and Amina was ready to deal the final card. Ethan Caldwell's voice cut through the obsidian's VIP lounge, sharp as a blade. "You're coming with us," he told Victoria Langley, who cowered on the marble floor, her silk dress a crumpled ruin. Amina Carter stood nearby, her dark eyes unwavering, the weight of her revelation as Zara King still rippling through the crowd. Tycoons whispered, their phones buzzing with the scandal, while Lisette Dubois watched with a predator's grin, her cigarette smoke curling upward. Claude Moreau, the manager, hovered uselessly, his pale hands twitching as the night spiraled beyond his control. Victoria's tear-streaked face twisted in panic. "No, Ethan, please," she begged, scrambling to her knees, her diamond ring glinting dully. "I didn't mean it. I'll tell you everything. Just don't drag me into this." Her voice was raw, a plea to a man who no longer listened. Ethan's expression was granite, his tall frame looming over her. "You don't get to choose," he said, his tone devoid of warmth. "You played Roland's game. Now you play ours." He turned to Amina, his eyes searching hers. "What's the plan, Zara? How do we use her?" Amina's mind raced, calculating risks like lines of code. "She's Roland's weak link," she said, her voice steady, commanding. "He thinks she's still loyal, still feeding him intel. We let him believe that. For now, she'll send a message, something to keep him close while we lock down Nexus and trace his back door." Victoria's head snapped up, her blue eyes wide with terror. "You're insane! He'll know! He always knows!" Her hands clawed at the table, as if it could anchor her to a world that was collapsing. Lisette stepped forward, her heels clicking, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Oh, Vicky, you're in deep now," she said, blowing a smoke ring. "Should have picked better friends than Roland Pierce." She glanced at Amina, her smirk softening into something like respect. "You're running this show, aren't you?" Amina ignored her, focusing on Ethan. "We need to move fast," she said. "Roland's already activated part of the back door. If he gets the Pandora subsets, he'll sell them to the highest bidder. Rogue states, cartels, anyone who wants chaos. We can't let that happen." Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. He pulled out his phone, his fingers flying. "Security's on the way. Chopper's landing in 5. Nexus Tower's going into lockdown." He looked at Victoria, his voice cold. "Get up. You're not staying here." Victoria's sobs choked out, but she staggered to her feet, her hands trembling. "I'll do it," she whispered, her voice broken. "I'll help. Just don't let him find me." Her eyes darted to Amina, pleading for mercy that wasn't there. Amina's gaze was steel. "You don't get absolution," she said. "You help because you have to, not because I care." Her words were a verdict, final and unyielding. She'd spent 5 years as a ghost, protecting her brother Idris, watching Roland's shadow grow. Victoria's betrayal was just another obstacle. Claude, sensing a chance to regain control, stepped forward, his voice shaky. "Mr. Caldwell, Miss Carter, this is a disaster. The Obsidian's reputation—" "Enough," Ethan snapped, cutting him off. "Your reputation's the least of my problems. Keep this quiet, Claude, or you'll answer to me." Claude shrank back, his face ashen, his hands clasping in defeat. The lounge doors swung open, and Gaston Villette, Ethan's lawyer, strode in, his tailored suit as sharp as his gaze. His pale face was calm, but his eyes scanned the room like a hawk's. "Ethan," he said, voice smooth, "I got your call. This is messy." He glanced at Victoria, then Amina, his brow arching. "Zara King, I presume? You've got quite the timing." Amina met his gaze, unflinching. "Timing's all I've had for 5 years," she said. "We need to contain this. She's our leverage." She nodded at Victoria, who whimpered. Gaston's lips curved, a reptilian smile. "Smart," he said. "But we don't need a public arrest. Too much noise." He turned to Ethan. "Let me handle her. No charges for the slap. It's a distraction. We keep her close, make her talk. Roland's the real target." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "She betrayed me, Gaston. She doesn't walk." "She doesn't," Gaston agreed, his voice low. "But we don't need her in a cell. We need her scared, compliant. She's our bait, like Zara said." He glanced at Amina, a flicker of approval in his eyes. "You're good at this." Amina didn't respond. She didn't trust Gaston's polished charm, but his logic was sound. "Fine," she said. "No charges, but she stays under our control. One wrong move, and she's done." Victoria's shoulders slumped, her fight gone. "I'll do whatever you want," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Just keep me safe." Ethan's face twisted, a mix of disgust and pity. "Safe?" he said. "You don't get safe. You get to fix this." He turned to Amina, his voice softening. "Let's go. Nexus is waiting." Amina nodded, her pulse steady despite the stakes. The Obsidian's chandeliers cast jagged shadows, the poker table a silent witness to the deal just struck. Victoria was no longer a player. She was a pawn, and Amina held the board. Amina Carter's boots echoed on the rooftop of the Obsidian, the night air sharp with the tang of jet fuel. The helicopter's blades thrummed, kicking up wind that whipped her dark hair. Ethan Caldwell strode beside her, his jaw set, his tailored coat flapping as he barked into his phone. "Nexus Tower now. Code black. No one moves until I'm there." Victoria Langley stumbled behind, her silk dress torn at the hem, her pale face streaked with mascara. Gaston Villette, the lawyer, guided her with a firm hand, his expression unreadable. The city's lights sprawled below, a glittering web of ambition and deceit. Amina's mind was a steel trap, parsing lines of code she hadn't touched in 5 years. Nexus, her creation, was under siege. Roland Pierce's back door, a digital parasite, was siphoning the Pandora subsets, algorithms that could predict wars, crashes, or pandemics. If Roland unleashed them, the world would burn. She glanced at Victoria, whose trembling hands clutched a borrowed coat. "Keep it together," Amina said, her voice low, cutting through the rotor noise. "You're no good to us broken." Victoria's blue eyes darted, wide with fear. "I didn't know he'd go this far," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Roland said it was just business." Her plea was pathetic, but Amina felt no sympathy. Victoria had dealt the cards. Now she'd face the consequences. Ethan ended his call, turning to Amina as they boarded the chopper. "My team's locking down the servers," he said, his voice tight. "But they don't know what to look for. This back door, you're sure it's still active?" His pale eyes searched hers, a flicker of the old trust resurfacing. Amina buckled in, her hands steady despite the stakes. "It's active," she said. I saw its signature last week, buried in a routine update. Roland's been probing the Pandora vault for months. He's close. Too close. She leaned forward, her voice dropping. We've got 48 hours, maybe less, before he cracks it. Gaston settled Victoria into a seat, his calm unnerving. She'll send the messages, he said, nodding at Victoria. Something to keep Roland thinking she's still his player. What do you want her to say? His eyes flicked to Amina, deferring to her lead. Amina's gaze was cold. Tell him the wedding's on track, that Ethan's distracted, vulnerable. Make him think he's winning. She turned to Victoria. You can do that, can't you? Lie like you've been lying to him. Her words were a blade, precise and unrelenting. Victoria nodded, her lips trembling. I can, she stammered, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. Gaston dictated a brief message, his voice smooth as silk, and Victoria typed, her fingers fumbling. The chopper lifted off, the city shrinking below as they sped toward Nexus Tower. Inside the cabin, Ethan's voice broke the hum of the engines. Zara, he said, using her true name. How did you survive this? 5 years, hiding, watching? I should have known. His tone was raw, guilt lacing every word. Amina's eyes stayed on the horizon. Memories of barista shifts, late-night coding, and constant fear flashing through her mind. I survived because I had to, she said, her voice low. Idris was my anchor. Roland's threat wasn't a bluff. He showed me my brother's face, live like a trophy. I erased myself to keep him safe. Every job, every alias was a step toward this moment. She met Ethan's gaze, her expression unyielding. You didn't know because I didn't let you. Ethan's hands clenched, his knuckles white. I was arrogant, he admitted, his voice barely audible. I thought Roland was finished. I thought I'd won. He paused, his eyes darkening. I won't make that mistake again. The chopper descended toward Nexus Tower, a sleek monolith piercing the skyline. Amina's pulse quickened as they touched down, security teams in black tactical gear swarming the helipad. Ethan led the way, his stride purposeful, while Gaston guided Victoria, who moved like a prisoner. Amina followed, her mind already in the war room, visualizing the code she'd written as Zara King. Inside, the tower's command center buzzed with activity, screens glowing with data streams. Amina took the lead, her voice cutting through the chaos. Get me a terminal, she said, striding to a workstation. I need root access. Full system diagnostics now. The techs, young and jittery, scrambled to comply, recognizing her authority. Ethan stood beside her, his presence grounding. What are we looking for? He asked, his voice steady despite the tension. A ghost, Amina said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Roland's back door is woven into the original seed code. It's a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. My team missed it because they weren't looking for elegance. Her screen lit up with lines of code, her eyes narrowing as she spotted a familiar pattern. A subtle, malignant thread. Victoria, seated under Gaston's watch, clutched her phone, her message to Roland sent. He hasn't replied, she whispered, her voice trembling. What if he knows? Then we're already behind, Amina said, not looking up. The game was on, and she was ready to end it. Amina Carter's fingers flew across the keyboard, the glow of Nexus Tower's war room screens casting sharp shadows on her dark skin. Lines of code scrolled, a digital battlefield where she hunted Roland Pierce's ghost. Ethan Caldwell stood at her shoulder, his pale eyes fixed on the data, his breath shallow. The room hummed with tension, text typing furiously, their screens flashing alerts. Victoria Langley sat in a corner, her pale face drawn, her phone clutched like a lifeline under Gaston Villette's watchful gaze. The clock on the wall ticked down, 48 hours to stop Roland from unleashing the Pandora subsets, algorithms that could destabilize nations. He's moving, Amina said, her voice low, urgent. She pointed to a rogue process buried in the system logs, its signature elegant and vicious. This is Roland's scalpel. He's probing the vault now. Her eyes narrowed, tracing the code's path. It was a masterpiece of malice, woven into Nexus's core by a man she'd once underestimated. Ethan leaned closer, his voice tight. Can you stop it? His tailored sleeve brushed her arm, a reminder of the empire they'd built, and the one they could lose. I can, Amina said, her tone steel. But it's not just about locking him out. He's already siphoned data. If he sold it, We're fighting a war on two fronts. Her fingers paused, a memory flashing. Idris's face on her laptop screen, Roland's threat echoing. She shoved it aside, focusing on the code. Gaston approached, his polished shoes silent on the floor. She got a reply, he said, nodding at Victoria, who shrank under his gaze. Roland's biting. He wants a status update on Ethan's servers. His voice was smooth, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. Amina glanced at Victoria, her expression cold. Tell him Ethan's distracted, that you're close to the passcodes, she said. Make it convincing. Her words were a command, not a request. Victoria nodded, her hands trembling as she typed. Mascara smudged across her cheeks. Ethan's jaw clenched. If she tips him off, he started, but Amina cut him off. She won't, she said, her eyes on the screen. She's too scared to cross us now. She hit a key, isolating the rogue process. Gotcha, she muttered, her fingers weaving a digital cage around Roland's code. The techs watched, awed as she worked, her mind a blade honed by years of survival. A screen flashed red, an alert. He's accelerating, Amina said, her voice rising. He's trying to dump the Pandora subsets to an external server. Her heart raced, but her hand stayed steady, rewriting access protocols on the fly. Ethan, get your forensics team on the dark web. If he's selling, we need to know who's buying. Ethan grabbed his phone, barking orders. Trace any transactions linked to Roland Pierce. Check offshore accounts, crypto wallets, everything. He turned back to Amina, his voice low. How long do we have? Hours, Amina said, her eyes never leaving the screen. Maybe less. She spotted a secondary process, a decoy Roland had planted. Clever bastard, she muttered, disabling it with a keystroke. The war room's hum grew louder, texts relaying data, screens lighting up with traffic spikes. Victoria's voice broke the rhythm, small and trembling. He replied again, she said, holding up her phone. He's asking for a meet, tonight. Her eyes darted to Gaston, then Amina pleading. What do I do? Gaston's lips curved, a predator's smile. You say yes, he said, his voice silky. Set the location. We'll handle the rest. He looked at Ethan, who nodded, his expression grim. Amina paused her typing, her mind racing. It's a trap, she said, her voice low. Roland doesn't meet unless he's sure he's in control. He's testing her. She turned to Victoria, her gaze piercing. You'll go, but you'll wear a wire. One wrong word and you're done. Victoria's face crumpled, but she nodded, her hands shaking. I'll do it, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I don't have a choice. Ethan stepped closer to Amina, his voice soft but urgent. Zara, if this goes wrong, we lose everything. Nexus, the subsets, you. His eyes held hers, a mix of fear and trust she hadn't seen in years. Then it won't go wrong, Amina said, her tone unyielding. She hit a final key, locking Roland's process in a digital vault. The screen flashed green. Temporary victory. We've got him contained, but he's not out. We need that meeting to trace his network. The war room doors opened, and Lisette Dubois sauntered in, her auburn hair gleaming under the lights. Heard you needed a distraction, she said, her voice smooth, her eyes glinting with mischief. I know Roland's type. I can keep his eyes off her. She nodded at Victoria, who looked away, humiliated. Amina studied Lisette, weighing her offer. You're in, she said, but you follow my lead. Lisette's smirk widened, a silent agreement. Ethan's phone buzzed, a text from his security chief. Roland's location's live, he said, his voice hard. We've got him. He looked at Amina, his resolve mirroring hers. Let's end this. Amina stood, her uniform a relic of a life she was shedding. The war room's screens glowed, the city's skyline a distant promise beyond the glass. Roland's game was over. Amina was ready to claim the pot. What a wild ride at the Obsidian. Amina's triumph shows no one's invisible when truth's at stake. What would you do in her shoes? Share your thoughts below. Thanks for diving into this tale of betrayal and justice with us. Your support fuels these stories, so hit like, share, and stay tuned for more drama. We'll see you in the next one.